The Veltari had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. Their empire stretched across hundreds of worlds, and every species they met faced the same choice: serve or die. Most chose to serve. The ones who refused no longer existed. Admiral Kalen stood at the observation deck of his command station on Vithos Prime. The planet below him was beautiful. Purple oceans covered most of its surface, and great silver cities rose from the coastlines. This was the heart of the Veltari Empire. This was power made visible. A junior officer approached him with a data tablet. Kalen took it without looking at the young soldier. He was used to receiving reports. The empire was vast, and there was always something happening somewhere. "A new species has been cataloged for harvest, Admiral," the officer said. "They call themselves humans. They come from a small world in an unremarkable star system. Our scouts say they have only recently discovered faster-than-light travel." Kalen looked at the tablet. The images showed a blue and green planet, mostly water. The beings that lived there looked weak. They had soft skin, no claws, no natural armor. They were small compared to the Veltari. "How many of them are there?" Kalen asked. "Approximately 12 billion on their homeworld. They have begun spreading to nearby planets and moons. Their technology is primitive. They still fight wars among themselves." Kalen smiled. This was almost too easy. A divided species with weak technology, they would make excellent slaves. The strong ones could work in the mines. The smart ones could serve in laboratories. The rest would be disposed of. "Send scout ships to their nearest colony," Kalen ordered. "I want a full assessment. Resources, population, defensive capabilities." Standard procedure. The officer bowed and left. Kalen returned to watching the stars. He had done this many times before. He had personally overseen the conquest of 37 species. Some had fought back. All had failed. The Veltari were the masters of this galaxy. Nothing would ever change that. 3 weeks later, scout ships had not returned. Kalen was annoyed but not worried. Space was dangerous. Ships sometimes had mechanical failures. Crews sometimes made mistakes. He sent a second group of scouts to investigate. They did not return either. Now, Kalen felt the first small hint of concern. He ordered a full military patrol to the human colony on the moon they called Titan. 12 warships with experienced crews. They would find out what happened to the scouts and punish anyone responsible. The patrol disappeared. Far away. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Taiho Park floated in the wreckage of a Veltari scout ship. His own vessel, the Horizon's Edge, held position nearby. The human ship was smaller than the alien craft, but faster and more agile. Taiho was 34 years old. He had black hair that was starting to show gray at the edges. His face was calm as he moved through the destroyed alien ship. He had been a soldier for 15 years. He had seen death many times. But what he found in this ship was different. The aliens had data crystals. Taiho's team collected them all and brought them back to the Horizon's Edge. It took 2 days to decode the information. When they finished, Taiho sat alone in his quarters and read everything. The Veltari had visited thousands of worlds. They had enslaved hundreds of species, and they had completely destroyed at least 40 civilizations. Entire peoples. Entire cultures. Gone forever. The data included images. Taiho saw cities burning. He saw populations being loaded onto transport ships. He saw mass graves on empty worlds. He saw the Veltari recording everything with pride, like hunters showing off their kills. And in the newest files, he saw Earth. He saw images of human cities taken from orbit. He saw population estimates. He saw notes about which humans would make good slaves and which ones were not worth keeping. They were already planning the harvest. Taiho closed his eyes. He thought about his mother back on Earth. He thought about his younger sister who worked as a teacher in Seoul. He thought about the children in her classroom, who knew nothing about the darkness waiting in the stars. He opened a secure communication channel to Fleet. Command Fleet Admiral Sujin. Yoon received the transmission at her headquarters on Mars. She was 61 years old, and she had been fighting wars since she was 19. She had survived the Unification Wars when humanity finally stopped fighting itself and became one people. She had lost friends, family, and parts of her own body in those conflicts. Her left arm was mechanical now, a reminder of a battle she barely survived. Sujin had always known that humanity was not alone. She had spent 30 years preparing for the day when someone would come for them. She had built secret shipyards. She had developed new weapons. She had trained soldiers for a war that most people did not believe would ever come. Now it was here. She watched Taiho's report in silence. She saw the same images he had seen. The dead worlds. The enslaved peoples. The plans for Earth. When the report ended, she sat very still for a long time. Her aide, a young officer named Woojin Beek, waited nervously. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Sujin looked at him. Her eyes were cold and hard. She had seen too much death to be shocked anymore. But she could still feel anger. She could still feel the fire that had kept her alive through all those years of war. "They hunt species," she said quietly. "They fly from world to world and they kill anything they find. They think they are predators." She stood up and walked to the window. Mars stretched out below her, red and dusty. Humanity had turned that dead world into a home. They had done it through determination, through sacrifice, through sheer stubborn refusal to give up.
"Now they have marked us,"
Sujin continued. "They are coming for our children. They are coming for our future." She turned back to Woojin. Her voice was steady. Her face showed no doubt. "Contact all fleet commanders. Activate Ghost Protocol. We are going to war." Woojin's eyes widened. Ghost Protocol was the most classified military doctrine in human history. It had been created for exactly this situation. An enemy that saw humanity as prey. An enemy that expected no real resistance. Ghost Protocol had one simple principle: strike first. Strike hard, and leave no one alive to warn the others. Admiral Woogin said carefully, "Ghost Protocol means total war. No negotiations. No mercy." "Are you certain?" Sujin looked at him with eyes that had seen the death of worlds. "They came to hunt us," she said. "They marked us for extinction. They gave us no choice." She picked up her command tablet and began issuing orders. "Now we hunt them." Across human space, ships began to move. Soldiers received their orders. Weapons were loaded. Engines powered up. The Veltari had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. They had never met a species that could truly fight. Back they were about to meet one. Now, and they would learn that humans were not. Prey, they were the most dangerous hunters the galaxy had ever seen. Commander. Doyan Kong had been trained for this moment his entire life. He sat in the captain's chair of the Black Heron, a ship designed for one purpose: to kill without being seen. The vessel was painted in colors that absorbed light. Its engines produced almost no heat signature. Its hull was covered in materials that scattered sensor beams in random directions. To any observer, the Black Heron did not exist. "Target in sight," said Hannah Lim from the weapons station. She was young, only 26, but she had the highest accuracy scores in the fleet. Her fingers moved across her controls with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Doyen looked at the main screen. The Veltari supply station hung in space like a metal flower. It was huge, at least 10 times the size of the Black Heron. Cargo ships moved around it like bees around a hive. The station supplied fuel and food to dozens of Veltari worlds. Without it, their military operations in this sector would collapse. "Distance?" Doyen asked. 4,000 kilometers in closing, answered Woojin Beek from the tactical station. Woojin had joined Do Yoon's crew 3 months ago, transferred directly from Fleet Admiral Yoon's personal staff. He was brilliant with data and strategy. "They have not detected us. Their sensors are looking in the wrong directions." Doyen nodded. The Veltari had grown lazy over 3,000 years of easy victories. They expected enemies to come at them directly with warnings and declarations. They did not expect shadows. "All crew, prepare for combat," Doyen said over the ship's communication system. His voice was calm. He had done this before. Not against the Veltari, but against pirates and rebels during the final years of the Unification Wars. The enemies changed. The methods stayed the same. The Black Heron moved closer. 2,000 kilometers. 1,000. 500. I want their communications disabled first, Doyan ordered. They cannot send a warning. Not one signal. Not one word. Understood, Hannah replied. Her hands were steady over the weapons controls. At 200 kilometers, Doyan gave the order. The Black Heron fired. Not with missiles or torpedoes, but with focused electromagnetic pulses that crashed into the station's communication arrays. The signals were invisible. By the time the Veltari knew something was wrong, they were already blind and mute. Alarms began to sound inside the station. Officers ran to their posts. Soldiers grabbed their weapons. But they had no idea where the attack was coming from. Their sensors showed empty space in every direction. Launch boarding pods, Doyan commanded. Small craft detached from the Black Heron and accelerated toward the station. Each pod carried 10 soldiers in sealed combat suits. They hit the station's hull and burned through with plasma torches. In less than 3 minutes, 40 human soldiers were inside the enemy structure. Sergeant Nari Cho led the first team. She was small for a soldier, but she moved with deadly speed. Her specialty was explosives. She could turn almost anything into a weapon. Contact ahead, said one of her soldiers. Nari raised her hand, signaling her team to stop. Through her helmet's display, she saw 4 Veltari guards at the end of the corridor. They were tall, almost 3 meters. Their skin was blue-gray, and their eyes glowed faintly yellow. They had not seen the humans yet. Weapons free, Nari whispered. Her team fired. The shots were silent, using compressed gas instead of explosive propellants. The Veltari fell before they could raise their own weapons. Their bodies hit the floor with heavy THUDs. Na or stepped over them without looking down. Move to the data center. We have 12 minutes. Across the station, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers moved through the corridors like ghosts. They killed quickly and quietly. The Veltari tried to organize a defense, but they were scattered and confused. They had never trained for this kind of fight. Their enemies had always been obvious, loud, it's easy to find. These humans were different. In the data center, Woojin Beek worked at a Veltari terminal. He had joined the boarding team personally because no one else could extract the information as quickly as he could. His fingers moved fast, pulling files and copying them to a portable storage device. I have their military deployment schedules, he reported through his communicator. Fleet positions for the entire sector. Also finding records of conquered species. Histories, population counts, current status, how long? Doyan's voice asked through the speaker. 6 more minutes. You have 4. Then we destroy the station and leave. Woojin worked faster. Around him, soldiers stood guard. The sounds of distant fighting echoed through the metal walls. Somewhere, a Veltari officer was shouting orders that no one would follow. When the data extraction was complete, Woojin signaled the team to move. They fought their way back to the boarding pods, leaving charges behind them. As the pods detached and raced back toward the Black Heron, the station began to explode from the inside. Doyan watched the destruction on his screen. The station came apart in a series of bright flashes, breaking into pieces that drifted slowly into the darkness of space. No distress signals detected, Hannah reported. No escape pods launched. Total elimination confirmed. Good, Doyan said. He felt no joy. This was not about pleasure. This was about survival. Set course for the rendezvous point. We have more targets. Far away on Vithas Prime, Admiral Kalen was beginning to understand that something was very wrong. Reports were coming in from across the Empire. Supply stations going dark. Patrol ships vanishing. Communication relays falling silent without explanation. At first, he thought it was a technical problem. Some kind of system failure spreading through their networks. But the pattern made no sense. The failures were happening in different locations, hundreds of light years apart. There was no way a technical fault could spread so far so quickly. Then the reports stopped coming at all. Entire sectors went quiet. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Kalen stood in his war room, surrounded by screens showing the state of his empire. Red markers indicated lost contact. Yellow markers showed areas where communication was unstable. The map was filling with red and yellow like a spreading disease. "What is doing this?" he demanded. His generals stood around him, but none of them had answers. "We have detected no enemy fleets," one general said. "No invasion forces. No attack patterns that we recognize. Then what is destroying our stations? What is killing our soldiers?" Silence. Kalen slammed his fist against the table. He was 400 years old. He had commanded fleets before most of these officers were born. He had personally overseen the extinction of species that threatened the empire. He was not afraid of war. But this was not war. This was something else. This was being hunted in the dark by an enemy he could not see. "The humans," he said suddenly. "The new species. The ones our scouts found? It's impossible," another general said. "They are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours." "Then explain this." Kalen pointed at the map. "Explain why we are losing stations in the exact sector where our scouts disappeared. Explain why our communications are dying in a pattern that moves outward from human space." The generals looked at each other. No one spoke. Kalen made a decision. "Send the burning armada. 500 warships. Find these humans and destroy them. I want their worlds burned. I want their species erased. I want nothing left to remember they ever existed." The orders went out. Across the empire, the most powerful fleet ever assembled began to gather. 500 ships carrying millions of soldiers. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen civilizations. Kalen watched them depart on his screens. He felt confident again. No primitive species could stand against such power. The humans would die screaming like all the others. He did not know that Fleet Admiral Su Jin-yoon was watching too. She had spies everywhere now, even inside Veltari command channels. She saw the burning armada leave. She counted the ships. She calculated their course, and she smiled. The Veltari were sending their best fleet to attack a human colony. They expected an easy victory. They expected terrified civilians and weak defenses. They would find something very different. They would find humanity waiting for them, and the hunters would become the hunted. War Marshal. Theron stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Fury. He was the most feared commander in the Veltari Empire. In his long life, he had personally overseen the complete destruction of 12 species. Entire civilizations had begged for mercy at his feet. He had given none. Now he led the burning armada toward a small human colony on a world called Kepler 44 to be. It was an agricultural planet, covered in farms and small towns. The population was only 80,000, mostly farmers and their families. Children playing in fields, old people tending gardens. They had no idea death was coming for them. "Time to target," Theron asked. "For hours," War Marshal, his tactical officer, replied. "We are receiving no resistance. No defensive fleets. No warning signals. This would be easy. Almost too easy. He had hoped the humans would put up some kind of fight. Killing defenseless civilians was efficient, but it was not satisfying. "Send a message to Vithas Prime," he ordered. "Tell Admiral Kalen that the human threat will be eliminated within 6 hours. This species is exactly as weak as our scouts reported." The message was sent. Theron sat back in his command chair and waited. Around him, 500 warships moved in perfect formation. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons. The smallest of them could level a city in minutes. Together, they could sterilize an entire planet. On Kepler 44 to be. The colonists had been evacuated 3 days ago. Fleet Admiral Su Jin-yoon had ordered every civilian transported to hidden bunkers on the planet's moon. The farms were empty now. The towns were silent. The fields that usually showed workers and children showed nothing but wind moving through the crops. Vice Admiral Yoon Ji-shin floated in her command ship behind the colony's largest moon. She was 45 years old, with short black hair and eyes that rarely showed emotion. Some called her cold. Others called her ruthless. She preferred the word efficient. Her fleet was hidden. 130 human warships positioned in the moon's shadow where Veltari sensors could not detect them. They had been waiting for 2 days. They would wait as long as necessary. The enemy fleet has entered the system, her sensor officer reported. 500 ships. They are maintaining standard formation. Standard formation, Yanji repeated quietly. She almost felt disappointed. The Veltari were not even trying to be creative. They expected no resistance, so they prepared for none. That would be their death. All ships hold position, Yanji commanded through the fleet communication channel. Wait for my signal. Do not fire until every target is in range. The burning armada approached the planet. Theron watched the blue-green world grow larger on his screens. It looked peaceful, quiet. He imagined the humans below, going about their simple lives, unaware that they were about to die. Weapons ready, he ordered. Begin bombardment pattern. I want the surface sterilized in 1 hour. His weapons officers powered up the main cannons. Energy hummed through the ship as massive systems prepared to fire. In minutes, the first shots would fall on Kepler-4 for 2B. The farms would burn. The towns would become craters. Nothing would survive. War Marshal, his sensor officer said suddenly. I am detecting movement behind the moon. Theron frowned. What kind of movement? Ships, sir. Many ships. They are. The officer stopped. His face went pale. Theron had never seen a Veltari look afraid before. They are everywhere, War Marshal. 130 ships. They are surrounding us. Yanji Shin gave the order. All ships. Fire. The human fleet emerged from behind the moon in perfect coordination. They came from 19 different directions, spreading out to encircle the Veltari armada, and they came firing. Human weapons were different from anything the Veltari had faced before. Humanity had spent thousands of years killing each other. They had refined the art of destruction to a level that no peaceful species could match. Their kinetic accelerators fired solid metal projectiles at speeds that made them more destructive than any energy weapon. Their missiles carried warheads designed to penetrate the strongest armor. Their electronic warfare systems scrambled enemy sensors and communications. The first volley hit the Veltari fleet like a hammer. Shields that had never been tested against serious opposition collapsed. Ships that had never been damaged exploded. Crews that had never experienced real combat died. Without understanding what was happening, Theron watched in horror as his fleet came apart. Ships were dying around him. The Eternal Fury shook as enemy fire hit its shields. Warning alarms filled the bridge. Officers screamed orders that no one followed. Turn fire. Theron shouted. All ships return fire. But the Veltari were not ready for this. Their targeting systems were confused by human electronic warfare. Their formations had broken under the surprise attack. Their commanders had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Fast and ruthless and without mercy. The battle lasted 2 hours. To Theron, it felt like 2 minutes. When it was over, the burning armada was finished. Of 500 ships, only 12 survived. They fled into hyperspace, damaged and terrified. The rest were wreckage. Drifting in the space around Kepler-4 4-B, Major Sunwoo led the boarding team onto the Eternal Fury. The flagship was badly damaged, but still intact. Yunji Shin wanted prisoners. She wanted information. Sunwoo moved through the dark corridors with his squad. Bodies were everywhere. The air smelled of smoke and blood. Emergency lights flickered, casting red shadows on the walls. They found Theron on the bridge. The War Marshal was alone, surrounded by the bodies of his officers. He held a weapon in his hand, but he did not raise it. You are Theron, Sunwoo said. It was not a question. You know my name? Theron's voice was hollow. I have killed billions. I have destroyed civilizations. My name is spoken with fear across the galaxy. Not anymore. Sunwoo walked toward him. His soldiers kept their weapons ready, but they did not fire. Theron did not resist when they took his weapon. He did not resist when they put restraints on his arms.
Out of das.
What are you? Theron asked. His eyes were empty, confused. Our scouts said you were primitive. They said you were weak. Your scouts were wrong, Sun Wu replied. He led Theron through the ruined ship. The war marshal, who had overseen the extinction of 12 species, walked in silence. He seemed small now, broken, just another prisoner in a war he did not understand. On the bridge of her command ship, Yunji Shin received reports from across the battlefield. The numbers were impressive. 488 enemy ships destroyed. 0 human ships lost. 12,000 Veltari prisoners captured. 1 war marshal in custody. She allowed herself a small smile. Then she opened a channel to Fleet Command on Mars. Admiral Yun, this is Vice Admiral Shin. The burning armada has been eliminated. Enemy commander captured. Kepler 442b is secure. Sujin Yun's face appeared on the screen. The old admiral looked at Yunji with something like pride. Casualties? Minor damage to 3 ships. 17 wounded. No deaths. Sujin nodded slowly. Send the prisoners to the interrogation center on Titan. I want everything they know about Veltar defenses. Then prepare your fleet for the next phase. Understood, Admiral. What is the next target? Sujin leaned forward. Her eyes were hard. Vithos Prime. We are going to their homeworld, Yunji. We are going to end this. Back on Vithos Prime, Admiral Kalen received a message from the 12 surviving ships of the burning armada. Their report was simple, delivered by a captain whose voice trembled with fear. The humans do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They hunt. They fight like nothing we have ever seen. War Marshal Theron has been captured. The armada is destroyed. We are all that remains. Kalen stared at the screen long after the message ended. For the first time in his 400 years, he felt real fear. Not caution. Not concern. True, deep, paralyzing fear. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. Admiral Kalen made a decision that no Veltari leader had made in 3,000 years. He ordered every fleet to return to the homeworld. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. He pulled back all forces from conquered territories. He abandoned outposts and stations across hundreds of light years. The mighty Veltari Empire, which had once stretched across the stars, now huddled around a single planet. Vithos Prime became a fortress. Orbital defense platforms surrounded it like a shell of steel. Thousands of warships patrolled every approach. Ground defenses turned the surface into a maze of weapons and shields. Kalen was determined to make his world impossible to attack. But the humans were already inside, Captain. Taiho Park stood in the cargo hold of a Veltari transport ship. Around him were 23 members of a unit called the Long Dark. They were the best special operations soldiers humanity had ever produced. They had trained for years to operate behind enemy lines without support, without resupply, without hope of rescue. Now they were on the most dangerous mission of the war. Final check, Taiho said quietly. His team moved through the hold, inspecting their equipment. They wore the clothing of slaves from a species the Veltari had conquered centuries ago. Their skin had been chemically altered to match alien complexions. Special contact lenses changed the color of their eyes. To any observer, they looked like members of the servant class that worked in Veltari cities. Nari Cho, the demolitions expert, carried a case full of what looked like cleaning supplies. Hidden inside were enough explosives to bring down a building. J1 SEO, the infiltration specialist, had memorized the layout of every major facility on Vithos Prime. Minha Zhang, the combat medic, carried medicines disguised as food supplements. The transport ship descended through the atmosphere. Taiho watched the purple oceans and silver cities grow closer. It was strange to see the homeworld of humanity's enemy. The Veltari had beautiful architecture. Their cities were clean and organized. If you did not know better, you might think this was a civilized place. But Taiho knew better. He had seen the data from the scout ships. He knew what the Veltari had done to other species. He knew what they had planned for Earth. The ship landed at a cargo port on the edge of the capital city. Taiho and his team filed out with hundreds of actual slaves from various conquered species. The Veltari guards barely looked at them. Slaves were invisible. Tools to be used and ignored. That was the Veltari's mistake. For 6 weeks, the Long Dark moved through the city. They took jobs as cleaners, food servers, and maintenance workers. They watched the Veltari from close range, learning their habits and routines. They mapped security systems and patrol patterns. They identified weaknesses in the planetary defense grid, and they talked to the other slaves. The Veltari had conquered many species. Some had been enslaved for 1,000 years. They worked in Veltari homes, Veltari factories, Veltari military bases. They saw everything. They heard everything. And they hated their masters with a fury that had burned for generations. Taiho met with their leaders in secret. A female from a species called the Morvathi, who had been a scientist before her world was conquered. A male from the Cathari who still remembered stories of his people's lost freedom. An elder from the Solani whose children had been taken as hostages to ensure his cooperation. "We have prayed for 3,000 years, the Morvathi woman said. Her eyes were large and dark, and they held the sadness of a people who had forgotten what freedom felt like. Every generation we tell our children, someone will come. Someone will challenge the Veltari. Someone will set us free. Your prayers have been answered, Taiho said simply. The humans have come, and we will not stop until the Veltari are defeated. What do you need from us? Information, access, and when the time comes, courage. The slaves began to help. They smuggled equipment past security checkpoints. They provided details about guard rotations and alarm systems. They created distractions that allowed Taiho's team to move through restricted areas. Slowly. Piece by piece, the Long Dark assembled everything they needed. The main target was the Planetary Defense Grid Control Center. It was located in a heavily guarded facility in the heart of the capital. The shields that protected Vethos Prime, the orbital weapons that could destroy entire fleets, the early warning systems that monitored every approach to the planet, all of it was controlled from this single location. If the control center went dark, the planet would be defenseless. Jaewon Seo spent 2 weeks studying the facility. He worked as a maintenance assistant, cleaning the corridors and fixing minor equipment problems. The Veltari guards ignored him completely. They did not notice that he was memorizing every door code, every security camera position, every shift change in the guard rotation. I have found a way in, he reported to Taiho one night. They were meeting in a storage room beneath a food processing plant. There is a maintenance tunnel that runs under the facility. It is used for power cables and water pipes. The security is minimal. Can we get the explosives through? Jaewon nodded. Nari will need to assemble the charges inside. The tunnel is too narrow for anything pre-built. Taiho looked at Nari. How long? 2 hours to set the charges. Another 30 minutes for the timer system? She paused. Once I start, there is no going back. If they find us, we die there. We knew that when we volunteered, Taiho said. The team spent 3 more days preparing. They moved equipment in small pieces, hidden in cleaning supplies and food containers. They studied the timing of guard shifts until they knew every movement by heart. They prepared escape routes that would get them out of the city when the chaos began. On the final night, Taiho gathered his team in a small room near the edge of the capital. Outside, the silver towers of the Veltari city rose toward the purple sky. Somewhere above those towers, a fleet of human warships was waiting for the signal. In a few hours, we will change history, Taiho said. His voice was quiet, but steady. The Veltari have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. They have destroyed civilizations. They have enslaved billions. They thought they were safe here, on their homeworld, protected by their shields and their weapons. He looked at each member of his team. Nari, who would crawl through dark tunnels to plant explosives. Jaewon, who would guide them through the facility. Minha, who would keep them alive if anything went wrong. And the others, each with their own skills, their own courage, their own reasons for being here. They were wrong, Taiho continued. We are here. And when we finish our work tonight, The Veltari will learn what it means to be hunted. The team moved out. They entered the maintenance tunnel at midnight. The passage was narrow and dark, barely wide enough for one person to crawl through. They moved in silence, guided by maps that Jaewon had memorized. Above them, thousands of Veltari went about their lives. Unaware that their world was about to change, Nari set the charges carefully. Each explosive was placed at a critical point in the facility's structure: the power systems, the communication arrays, the shield generators. When these charges exploded, the entire building would collapse. And with it, the defenses of Vithos Prime. 2 hours later, they emerged from the tunnel on the other side of the city. They were tired and dirty, but they were alive. Behind them, a timer counted down. Taeho looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, beyond the shields, beyond the orbital defenses, the United Human Fleet was waiting. He pressed a button on his communicator. Admiral Yoon. This is Captain Park. The mission is complete. Charges are set. Timer is active, familiar voice answered. Understood, Captain. Excellent work. Get your team to the extraction point. The fleet will arrive in 3 hours. Taeho allowed himself a small smile. We will be waiting, Admiral. He led his team into the shadows of the city. Around them, the Veltari continued their normal lives. Families eating dinner, workers heading home, children sleeping in their beds. They did not know that everything was about to change. In 3 hours, the shields would fall, the defenses would die, and above them, 3,000 human warships would appear like judgment falling from the sky. The hunt was almost over. The explosions shook the capital of Vithos Prime like an earthquake. Windows shattered. Buildings trembled. Citizens stumbled in the streets, looking up in confusion. For 3,000 years, this city had never known fear. Now it was learning. Admiral Kalen was in his command center when the alarms began. Lights flashed red across every screen. Officers shouted reports that made no sense. Defense grid is down. Shields are failing across the northern hemisphere. We have lost contact with orbital platforms 7 through 32. Kalen grabbed the nearest officer. What is happening? Are we under attack? Before anyone could answer, the sky lit up. 3,000 human warships dropped out of hyperspace above Vithos Prime. They appeared everywhere at once, filling the space around the planet like a storm of metal and fire. The Veltari ships that tried to intercept them were destroyed in seconds. The orbital platforms that still functioned were overwhelmed by concentrated fire. Fleet. Admiral Sujin Yoon sat on the bridge of her flagship, the Dawn of Earth. Around her, officers coordinated the largest military operation in human history. Thousands of ships moved in perfect formation, each one knowing its role, its target, its purpose. Open a channel to the planet, Sujin ordered. The communication officer worked quickly. A moment later, Sujin's face appeared on every screen on Vithos Prime, in homes and offices. In military bases and government buildings, every Veltari saw the same thing. A human female with gray hair and cold eyes. Attention, citizens of Vithos Prime, Sujin said. Her voice was calm and clear. I am Fleet Admiral Sujin Yoon of the United Human Fleet. Your empire has committed crimes against countless species. You have enslaved billions. You have destroyed civilizations. You marked our people for extinction? The entire planet held its breath. Today, your reign ends. You have 2 choices. Surrender now and face justice, or resist and face destruction. You have 1 hour to decide. The transmission ended. Kalen stood in the silence that followed, his mind racing. Surrender was impossible. The Veltari did not surrender. They were the masters of the galaxy. They did not bow to inferior species, but looking at the screens. At the impossible number of human ships surrounding his world, Kalen felt doubt for the first time in his long life. Activate the extinction pulse, he ordered. His officers stared at him. The extinction pulse was the Veltari's final weapon. It was designed to destroy an entire star system, killing everything within light years of its detonation. It had never been used. It was meant only for the most desperate situation when the Empire itself faced total destruction. "Admiral, if we activate the pulse, we will die too," a general said carefully. "Everyone on Vithos Prime will die, and we die as warriors," Kalen replied. His voice was cold. "If we cannot rule the galaxy, then no one will. If these humans think they can defeat us, they will learn that victory has a price." He turned toward the door. "The extinction pulse is in the Citadel. I will activate it myself. Prepare the secondary defenses. By me. Time." High above the planet, Stujin Yoon received a priority message from Captain Taiho Park. He and his team were in position at the edge of the capital. Watching the chaos unfold, "Admiral, we have intercepted Veltari communications. Kalen is moving toward something called the Citadel. They're talking about an extinction pulse. It sounds like a super weapon." Sujin felt a chill run through her. She had studied the Veltari for decades. She knew they were capable of terrible things. But a weapon that could destroy an entire star system? If they activated it, humanity's victory would be meaningless. "Where is this Citadel?" "Coordinates are being transmitted now. It is a heavily fortified facility on the outskirts of the capital. We can see it from our position. The defenses are massive." Sujin made her decision in less than a second. "Major Sun Woo, oh, I am authorizing an immediate orbital drop. Your target is the Citadel. Find Kalen. Stop the weapon. Whatever it takes." Sun Woo's voice came back immediately. "Understood, Admiral. We will not fail." 10,000 human Marines launched from their ships in drop pods. They fell through the atmosphere like a rain of fire, their heat shields glowing orange against the purple sky. The Veltari ground defenses tried to shoot them down, but there were too many pods coming too fast. From too many directions, Sun Wuo hit the ground running. His armor absorbed the impact, and he was firing before his feet touched the soil. Around him, thousands of Marines were doing the same thing. They smashed through the outer walls of the Citadel like a wave breaking against rocks. The fighting was brutal. Veltari soldiers defended every corridor, every room, every stairway. They fought with the desperation of beings who knew this was the end. But the humans pushed forward. They had crossed galaxies for this moment. They had lost friends and family. They had trained their entire lives for exactly this kind of battle. Nothing would stop them. Now, Sun Woo led his squad through the lower levels of the Citadel. They followed the path that intelligence had mapped, moving toward the deepest part of the facility. Bodies lay everywhere. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning. Finally, they reached a massive door. It was sealed and reinforced, designed to withstand any attack. Sun Woo's demolition specialists placed charges around the frame.